Hello, everyone. Glad to be back at Web Summit and very glad to be here for the first time. It's always been a very interesting place to be here, the Web Summit. We're always at different moment in time, and what I'd like to do here, I'm not here to sell you anything, but I'm here to tell you that this is a great time to build. So basically, I've done a bunch of different things in my life. I've been a hacker, I've been a journalist, I've been an entrepreneur. But most of my time of fame was during the Web 2 era, an incredible era where everything was possible. That's me and the green thing, with a bunch of companies that came out of nowhere. The only reason we could do what we do was we suddenly understood the web could actually be a platform. So these are my different projects. At Vibe and Jolly Cloud, I built a computer. It was a little bit, I discovered why hardware is hard, actually, but a bit ahead of its time. So, as you know, there are two ways of making money on the internet. You either bundle things or unbundle things. But let me put that in different terms. The two models we have today are either you build over the top of someone else's platform, or you can do a full stack, meaning you can actually create the entire thing for yourself. So if you get in the context of AI, a few years ago, last year, I was in a hackathon in Lithuania, and every company that I saw was telling me, oh, we're doing this AI company. I said, are you doing a wrapper on top of OpenAI? I said, oh, yes, how do you know? That was the way of doing it. And now, there's the opportunity to actually build with the technology from the inside, with full control. We're going to talk a bit about this. At the end of the day, the world is about two things. Either you have an open technology, and everyone can join, or you have a closed technology, and you have to ask the other guy to allow you on their platform. I think what's interesting with open source is that a year ago, basically everyone was telling you if you don't have $1 billion, you cannot create an AI company. You should do LLM. The problem with LLM, as you know, is that the value invested decrease over time because there's always a better LLM. And the recent news have showed us that it's actually the case. And what's interesting is we're going to move from being a wrapper company to a builder company. So we're in this incredible time where basically everyone can build, and everyone can build for way cheaper than we could in the past. But before to get there, you have to understand one thing, is that the new feature, you know, every time we go in the tech, there's web, there's mobile, there's cloud, there's AI. But there's a new feature that came in as well, that is geopolitics. We're in a weird world where technology is changing geopolitics, but the opposite is also true. To get back to that, I'd like to compress the last 30 years, just to make sure we understand where we are. So, I don't know who ever here in this room was in the early days of the internet, like the 90s. Just raise your hands. I can see some people here. So, when we talk about the crash of the dot-com, it's actually not true. It was the crash of the telecoms. This is WorldCom, an old telecom operator. I'm sorry, it went so up, but I couldn't fit it in the slides. And it crashed, and everything crashed. Everybody believed the value was in building telecom operators. The reality was that the value was in the software. There's a small company in 2004, Google, who released their first S1, and everybody looked at this and said, damn, it's a cash machine. Don't forget, Google hired Al Varian, that is an economist, not to build a business model, but to create an entire economy around their product. Of course, what happened after that is The people who figured it out started consolidating. It's the era of big tech, big whatever, big cloud, etc. And we understood something is software is the value creator, 0 to 1. You build the software, and all the teams here, great teams, are here to build software. But something new happened. With the cloud and mobile, you had a multiplicator. Suddenly, you could build before for millions, and literally overnight, you could build for billions. We started having companies with billions of users. It sounds crazy now because it feels like, oh yeah, of course. But at the time, it was just incredibly, incredibly impressive. And this is, of course, why all the companies involved in that multiplication became so big. But the secret weapon on this is the cloud capital. They understood something that most others didn't. The cloud capital is very simple. You have a data center somewhere in the world, sometime in multiple locations. You buy a bunch of GPUs and CPUs and stuff, and you rent software. You rent to everybody. So you find yourself in the two options. Either you pay the rent, or you collect the rent. And if you want to know why we're talking about trillion-dollar valuation these days, is that imagine someone finding a way to collect the rent everywhere in the world. Anywhere there's a mobile phone or a computer, you actually, just by opening up your computer, they're printing money. So, of course, that completely changed the geopolitics of cloud capital, because you have people who are cloud positive. They export the technology, they're making money, and there are people who are importing that technology. That's the reality of the internet. Most of us are renters. We rent our apps, or software, or daily technology, or AI, etc. Sometimes you sell to someone else, but you also rent from one of the big guys. Basically, this is a glorified renter economy. You build technology, but what you do is you actually rent, sell, organize. NVIDIA is the last edition, of course, in this space. They figure out a way to create their own cloud within the cloud providers. What is, when you think about it, absolutely unbelievable. So where does AI fit in this? It's literally a trillion-dollar question. Is it better? This is a really big question we have to ask ourselves, because for $1 you invest in cloud, the return on investment is absolutely marvelous. But for $1 you invest in all these big AI projects, how much money do you get back? This is a really interesting question, right? Is it better than cloud capital? Let's call it cognitive capital, the ability to produce intelligence. You put money, you get intelligence as a feedback. Superintelligence, as we call it, because it used to be AGI, but now everybody seems to stick to the term superintelligence, I'm going to keep that, offers something potentially better. I say potentially because when you think about it, the whole idea of cognitive capital are these three things. You have a hard problem. Potentially, if you throw GPUs at this, you may have a Nobel Prize as a service to help you figure it out. Look at what happened with AlphaFold, where we basically literally did all the work, and now scientists going backward trying to figure out, oh, what is interesting with what this AI has found. There's the myth, I put it in quote, of the trillion-dollar entrepreneur. The idea that one of us in this room, but is so clever in using AI, would basically build a trillion-dollar valuation company using agent, humans, combination of both, figuring it out. Maybe. One of the most certain thing is we're moving in the age of synthetic workforce. So either in the army, you had GIs, now you have drones. Intelligence as well, sales. I've seen many companies who said, oh, we just replace our sales with an army of GPTs. Also support. Now with robotics, we're going to be so much thing. But this idea that you can add, especially think about it, at a time where knowledge is not evenly distributed in this world. So the beauty of synthetic workforce, on paper at least, is that you can have ready-to-go, smart, high level of smart intelligence for your problem. Obviously, to do that, there's the law of scale. You need all the data in the world, most of the GPUs. The problem is data, we're hitting a hard point to 2030. Apparently in 2030, we don't have any more new data or valuable data. We might switch to synthetic, or we already did. All the compute in the world, I mean, NVIDIA love that sentence, but they're not the only one now, because they have, as you know, competitors. All the energy supply, this is the big thing right now, because we want to build data centers, but the question is, there was a Gartner studies that said, we don't have enough energy to supply in the US in 2027. Someone said, the AI is a 21st century technology built on a 19th century electric grid. And it's not completely untrue, as you know. So this is the big competition. The problem is AI to work needs global commerce. It needs regulation, security standards, copyright laws, chipset manufacturing, trust and safety, all these things. You cannot throw it out there. And we have to introduce the geopolitical instability. This is the third act. You know when you compress something so much that it breaks in multiple parts? That's probably where we are at the moment, the breakup phase. So deglobalization, the splinternet, innovation divergence, that I think is one of the most exciting things in this world. So this is a cheap global journey. To build a chip, it's not one country, one place. If it's an ARM, it started in the UK, it goes all around. I'm sure, this is a simplified version, but I'm sure every place in the world, including here, has some part in the building of a chip. It's not like when you hear, yes, it's all in Taiwan, or it's all in this and that. No, it's a cooperation. You need components, expertise, software testing, et cetera, et cetera. So here it is. The splinternet, the idea that we live in a splintered internet, is actually real as well. Have you seen probably all the news stories about submarine cables, the rise of satellites like Starlink, et cetera. So we live in an internet that is not a unified version. And as builders, you have to figure out how to operate in such a complex world. The other thing that I found fascinating is the idea of innovation divergence. And what's interesting with DeepSeek is there's DeepSeek, the company, and there's the DeepSeek methodology. And I found the DeepSeek methodology fascinating because I remember the first day my dad brought us a personal computer. I had an Apple II. And I looked at the box, and I said, but computers are this big thing in the room. You actually tell me we have that at home, and I can use it. And in some ways, this is exactly what's happening now with AI. It's an incredible moment, because suddenly you can suck up the intelligence from a larger model and build your own thing. The question is, right now we live in a world where you have big AIs, producers. There's a little bit more, but I simplified. Sorry about that. And everyone else is a swing state. It means they could either go to the Chinese technology, American technology. The smartest are usually doing both. That means we have a lot of opportunities, and let me get really briefly, quickly to this. First, the DeepSeek moment means that if you have open source, your own cloud, and you can do your own training, post-training, it means you adapt the AI to your own needs. You have a sovereign AI. This idea was impossible to believe just a year ago. That means that countries now can have locally grown AI. This is a new thing. You can actually build things that tailor your exact needs, your exact culture, your exact vision of the world. For startups, it actually means that you can now integrate intelligence for your own company. You can actually create a self-sustained product. For me, it means that I'm actually going back into it because I've been waiting for that for a long time. I've been waiting in a moment where actually I'm a product consumer person, so I want to build homegrown intelligence, but I want to design it. And for that, I need to have access to the product. If the only way you have is to call someone, even if my co-founder of my last company is now the head of developer relation at OpenAI, it still means that I have to do, talk to people, make sure they accept. The idea of controlling the whole stack is so important. So we are in an incredibly interesting moment because the world is complex. I'm going to be polite, just say it's really hard to grasp, harder the last years. And the paradox is that intelligence is more affordable, and we can build things. As I see that I have been a bit faster than I was expecting, I will share a little bit about what I believe is that at the moment, I'm trying to see how to put intelligence on home computers. I bought Macintosh M4 computers and playing with this. And I can believe for sure that a year, 2, 3 years from now, the intelligence we have currently on our favorite product will be here. And what can we do if we live in a complex world, but we have our best friend, our partner, AI partner, who actually understand with us, for us, on our device? Because, of course, when you start talking about very personal things, things that are related to you, your own life, your family, things you care about, you want to make sure that trust can only be achieved by having your own AI. But on the other side, you're going to have this super intelligent AI, this Nobel Prize as a service, and you will be able to tap in if you need to do more complex problems. Personally, I think it's never been a more exciting time to be in AI, and I think all of us should actually start building. Thank you so much. Appreciating